Afternoon. Good, good. Yeah.
I just found out from the IT folks that your screens aren't working. It's an ongoing process, so unfortunately. You turn around. Thanks.
I'll pull up and stop here.
We'll call the meeting to order. This is the Commission on Chicago Landmarks regular meeting. Today's date is January 9th. I'll do the roll call. Vice Chair, Commissioner Jekowitz,
Present.
Commissioner Burns,
Present.
Commissioner Fair,
Present.
Commissioner Ponce,
Present.
Commissioner Rubin,
Present.
Commissioner Tolliver,
Present.
and I am Commissioner Wong. We do have a quorum. Happy New Year, everybody. I'd like to ask anyone wishing to make a statement on today's agenda to complete a public comment card and give the card to a member of the staff. Comment cards are available at the door. As a courtesy to other individuals wishing to offer comments, we ask that members of the general public limit your statements to 3 minutes or less. When the time comes for public comment on the individual item on the agenda, I'll call for the names from the cards and ask you to come forward to the microphone and make your statement. At that time, please state your name and the interest organization or company you represent, if any. There's one over here too. For the record, Commissioner Boatwright has just arrived. First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the previous meeting of December 5th, 2024. Those were included in your packets. Any discussion on those? If not, I'd like to request a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
So
Commissioner
moved,
Fair. Second.
Commissioner Fair, and second, Commissioner Tolliver. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Item number 2 is a preliminary landmark recommendation for the Morning Star Baptist Church of Chicago. This is in the 3rd Ward, located at 3993 South Dr. Martin Luther King Drive, Junior Drive. And Matt, you're on.
Thank you, Chairman Wong and members of the commission. For your consideration today is a preliminary landmark recommendation for this building known as Morning Star Baptist Church of Chicago. The congregation has worshiped here and upgraded this building for the past 88 years. In September of 2023, the program committee of the Landmarks Commission received a suggestion for its landmark designation from Kathy Mitchell, a former member of the congregation. Last March, we met with Dr. Barlow, who's pastor, and members of the congregation to discuss what landmarking would mean for them, and they understood this and they are in full support. We believe the building has a lot to say about history and architecture, and it's a fine candidate for landmark designation. Church is located at 3993 South King Drive in the 3rd Ward. Alderman Dowell is traveling today, but she insisted that I convey to you her full support for this landmark designation. Here's a closer view showing the building's situation on the landscaped section of King Drive, which was originally known as Grand Boulevard. That boulevard is part of the city's Park and Boulevard system. The building is in the Grand Boulevard community area and the historic Bronzeville neighborhood. We believe that Morningstar meets 4 criteria for Chicago landmark designation, including number 1 for heritage, and specifically the African-American experience in Bronzeville. And criterion 3 for significant persons, specifically some of the congregation's leaders over time. And the building meets criterion 4 for architecture as a building that has had a unique architectural evolution over time. And finally, we believe that the various architects who contributed to Morningstar's architectural development, specifically Walter Bailey, Radcliffe Hunter, and Charles Duster, are significant architects. Morningstar was established by 25 African Americans who had migrated from the South to Chicago in 1917, driven by the pursuit of better economic opportunities and an escape from the oppressive conditions of the South. The heritage of Morningstar is really interwoven with the Great Migration, which transformed Chicago's political, cultural, and artistic landscape. The founding members of Morningstar were led by Pastor Edmund Hubbard, and in its early days, the congregation worshiped in a rented building at 3800 South Vincennes. No photo exists of the building, but it was right next to this building on Aldine Square. After 2 years of growth, the congregation was able to purchase the Vincennes property. During Pastor Hubbard's leadership, Morningstar supported the Chicago Urban League by providing clothing, meals, and shelter to those in need. Hubbard also supported the United Negro Improvement Association, or the UNIA, an international African nationalist organization founded by Marcus Garvey in 1914. This announcement was for a lecture at Morningstar by J.W.H. Eason, a leader of the UNIA. Morningstar also hosted the Black Cross Nurses of the UNIA. Formed in 1920, the organization offered African American women training in nursing to improve health in communities. In 1922, Pastor Hubbard left Morningstar for mission work in Africa. He was succeeded by Ira Hendon, shown here, who would remain at the helm for 26 years. A year into his pastorship, the congregation paid off their mortgage for the first church on Vincennes, yet any sense of stability was short-lived. In 1936, the federal government began to clear land in Bronzeville for the Ida B. Wells homes of the Chicago Housing Authority, shown here. Morningstar's church on Vincennes was seized through eminent domain. Undeterred, the congregation secured a building at 3993 South King Drive, then known as South Parkway, where Morningstar still stands. This is the only photo we have of the building after it was converted in 1939 to a church for Morningstar. The building was originally known as a livery, which was a garage for the storage and repair of car and trucks. What's really remarkable was that the church was able to acquire and convert this building to a house of worship in the 30s, given that the Great Depression was raging. For the 1930s renovation, Morningstar hired architect Walter Thomas Bailey, the first African-American architect registered in the state of Illinois. After earning his degree in architecture from the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, Booker T. Washington recruited Bailey to the Tuskegee Institute to lead the school's mechanical industries department and to supervise planning and architecture on the growing campus at Tuskegee. In 1916, Bailey left Tuskegee to open his own architectural practice in Memphis, where he made contact with the Knights of Pythias, an African-American fraternal organization, which turned out to be an important client for Bailey. In 1914, Bailey designed the Pythian Hotel and Bathhouse in Hot Springs National Park, Arkansas. Another very important commission that Bailey received from the Pythians was for their national temple in Bronzeville that was completed in 1925. This is the building. It was an impressive 8-story structure which housed the organization's offices and meeting halls, as well as rental space. At the time of its construction, the $1 million building was regarded as the largest building financed, designed, and built by African Americans. It also prompted Bailey to relocate to Chicago. The temple's yellow terracotta facade was covered with Egyptian motifs like this fragment, which is preserved in the collections at the Art Institute of Chicago. In addition to Morning Star, Bailey was the architect of the First Church of Deliverance in 1939, where he transformed a former factory into the streamlined modern church, which is now, as we know, a designated Chicago landmark. No discussion of the history of Morning Star would be complete without a mention of gospel music. In addition to Sunday service, the church hosted gospel events featuring well-known performers. One of the most significant contributions of the church to gospel was the Barrett sisters. Delois Barrett Campbell, Billy Mae Barrett Green Bay, and Rodessa Barrett Porter grew up singing at Morning Star as kids, as their father served as a deacon and their mother was a member of the choir. The Barrett sisters formed their own group in 1950, launching a career that would span several decades and include international tours and vinyl pressings. After moving into the new church in 1937, Reverend Hendon continued to grow the congregation until his death in 1958. He was succeeded by this man, Reverend Dr. Luke Mingo. In addition to leading his flock, Mingo was active in ecumenical groups and the South Central Alliance. That organization rehabilitated housing in Bronzeville to prevent the community from becoming a target of federal urban renewal programs. Mingo was also a visionary and a builder, for it was under his lead that the congregation undertook a massive renovation of the building that transformed it in the 1960s into a work of modern architecture that exists today. This is the front facade. It was completely rebuilt from its 1937 appearance with new structural piers clad in smooth limestone, giving the facade verticality and rhythm. Large Dal de Verre windows, which is Dal de Verre was a type of French stained glass, which consists of glass slabs set in epoxy. It was a very modern ecclesiastical window system. As you can see, the window openings have pointed arch, which convey the building's ecclesiastical meaning. This detail shows Lannon stone cladding in the recessed portions of the wall, which adds texture to the facade. Between the tops of the piers, the architects place these arches, which are known as brise soleil, to unify the top of the wall. In addition to the new front facade and the 1960s renovation, the interior was completely transformed. Inside the entrance door, this double-height vestibule takes full advantage of the cobalt blue illumination provided by the windows. The modern welded steel stairways lead up to a mezzanine level, with these open walkways that lead to a fellowship hall, which is behind the photographer in this view. Modern light fixtures at the ceiling are from the 1960s renovation. Passing through the vestibule back on the first floor, one enters this worship space, the sanctuary. It features a central aisle flanked by banks of modern pews with a pickled finish. The ceiling above the aisle is recessed with cove lighting. The columns in the sanctuary are pretty remarkable. Very slender shafts maximize views, and then you have these almost trumpet-like capitals that reveal a super high degree of skill in traditional plaster work. The 1960s transformation of Morningstar was designed by the African-American architectural firm of Hunter, Cohn, and Duster and Associates. The firm was established by Radcliffe Hunter, who earned degrees in architecture and interior design from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. In addition to Morningstar, Hunter also designed this building, the St. Thomas Episcopal Church at 3801 South Wabash in 1977. He was a member of the congregation. For the Morningstar Commission, Hunter was joined by architect Charles Duster, who was at the time employed by Skidmore, Owings and Merrill, or SOM. It appeared that Duster did the Morningstar Commission apart from his work at SOM. Duster was the grandson of renowned journalist and civil rights activist Ida B. Wells and her lawyer journalist husband, Ferdinand Lee Barnett. He earned a degree in architectural engineering in 1954 from the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. 2 years later, he began a long career at SOM, a firm that was shaping the modern movement in architecture. The rise of SOM corresponded with the rise of American corporations, which SOM served. At the firm, Duster contributed to dozens of prominent projects, such as this office and training center for United Airlines that was in Elk Grove Village, recently demolished, and this sprawling corporate campus for the Upjohn Pharmaceutical Company from 1961 in Kalamazoo. While SOM was a powerhouse in corporate projects like that, Duster worked closely at SOM with Walter Netsch, who had established something of a boutique practice niche at SOM that focused on planning academic buildings, museums, and public housing. Duster was part of the team with Netsch that designed this research facility at U of C and the master plan for the University of Chicago Circle campus. In terms of integrity, we believe that Morningstar meets this criterion. While the building has undergone significant evolution since its initial construction as a garage in 1912, the 1960s modernist renovation is obviously significant. And the congregation has maintained the building well since these renovations were made more than half a century ago. So to conclude, I want to thank the congregation and Dr. Barlow and Kathy Mitchell for supporting this landmark recommendation. In terms of the significant features, we recommend that they be all exterior elevations, including roof lines of the building. And with the full support of the congregation, the interior, the major historic interior spaces being the entrance vestibule, including its internal stairways and elevated walkways, and the main worship space of the sanctuary. These interior spaces include, but are not limited to, the overall historic spatial volume of the space, historic decorative wall, floor, and ceiling materials and finishes. As you know, with any house of worship, we have to be careful, so we want to specifically exclude from the significant features anything related to worship, such as the baptistry, pulpit, pews, and organ. So that's our recommendation to you. I'm here happy to answer questions, and I believe Kathy Mitchell is also in attendance.
Thank you, Matt. Does the commission have any questions for Matt at this time? Seeing none, you indicated that Ms. Mitchell is here to speak. Yes, please come up to the front to a microphone.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kathy Mitchell, and it has been an honor and a privilege to coordinate the process of recommending Morningstar Baptist Church of Chicago for landmark status with the city of Chicago, and I'm coordinating that process on behalf of the church. I want to begin by briefly thanking Dr. Henry A. Barlow, pastor of Morning Star, for sharing the initial idea with me and entrusting my firm, KCM Communications, with directing the project. I also want to acknowledge the members of Morning Star for their enthusiastic support of pursuing landmark status, particularly the following members who took the time to share important recollections with planning department researchers and staff. Mr. Norval Edwards, Mrs. Joyce Franklin, Mrs. Jean McMiller, Mrs. Desiree Wilson, and Mr. Chester Mitchell, who at 101 years old is still church treasurer and happens to be my dad. A special thank you goes to William Mitchell of WFM Consulting for sharing his architectural expertise and making important discoveries about the crucial role of African-American architects in the design of Morning Star, specifically Walter T. Bailey, as you've just heard, who designed the church's first renovation in the 1930s, and partners Radcliffe Hunter and Charles E. Duster, whose firm designed the second iteration in the late 1960s. Finally, I'd like to thank the members of the Planning Commission and the Planning Department staff for your willingness to consider Morning Star for landmark status with the city of Chicago. In the face of efforts to denigrate and diminish the teaching of African American history, projects such as this one illustrate the importance of preserving the experiences of everyday Black citizens and how their experiences have shaped larger historical narratives, such as the Great Migration and the Civil Rights Movement. Historic mainline Black churches, such as Morning Star, have played an undeniable role in the development of Chicago, the Midwest region, and the entire United States of America. So on behalf of Morning Star Baptist Church of Chicago, I thank you for assisting us in our effort to preserve the church's rich history for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mitchell. Does the commission have any questions or Ms. Mitchell? Commissioner Tolliver.
I don't have any questions for Ms. Mitchell. I have a follow-up comment to Ms. Mitchell. Charles Duster, I'm former rector, that's pastor in the Episcopal Church of St. Edmunds Episcopal Church. And 35 years ago, when we founded St. Edmunds Redevelopment Corporation, which builds affordable housing, Charles Duster was a lifelong member of St. Edmunds Church, and he was our first architect for our affordable housing projects, and he did it pro bono because in those days we had no money. And his daughter, Cecilia Duster Hunt, is my deputy director. So there's a close, so not only did he make a contribution that you talked about, but he helped us launch an affordable housing ministry that we couldn't have done without his free architectural services.
That's wonderful. There's so many connections in this project that we found in our doing our preliminary research. So I'm not at all surprised that there's that connection as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Tolliver, for the information. Mr. Blakemore, you have the floor.
Very important to recognize our historical treasures. But I was listening. I use public meetings as a way of education. Now, I was under the impression that you was going to stick with the historical. Some of these, that new architect have changed completely how that building looked when it was first built. So we have to think. A church have gone through a lot historically, but the architects also. So I think that you all are dropping the ball here. It doesn't look anything like the original. So I don't know how and why, how you set up these criteria. I question the way you set up your criteria. It doesn't look anything like the original, but the history of this church and Black history is just beautiful. I was just listening and learning. But so it was a garage or whatever. So now it looks completely different. So I think maybe you have dropped the ball here with your criteria. It looks nothing like the original church. So we have these great Black architects who have gone to these prestigious schools, Tuskegee and these other universities, and they are the new modern architects. So the way it looks now, it didn't look that way. So it have lost its original look. And this is what makes Mr. Blakemore unique. He doesn't have to go along to get along. I was sitting here and I said, oh, this is beautiful and this and that. And you showed the old and you showed the new. You can show the new Mr. Blakemore, 21 years old. And then you can see the 82-year-old Mr. Blakemore, and they don't even look alike. They don't even feel alike. So that's why it's very, very important for me to show up. So your criteria that you have, you did not stick to the historical landmark. And what motivates me to come here also is because of our treasure, the Riga Theater on 79th and Cottage Grove. That's what motivates, not Cottage Grove, Stone Island. That's what motivates me. And you're going to buzz. You didn't buzz for her. And you're not buzzing for me. And thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blakemore. Thank you, Mr. Blakemore.
Completely different. It's more modern.
Nobody else has signed up to speak in this matter. Yes. With nobody else signed up to speak, is there any further discussion on this matter? If not, I'd like to request a motion to adopt the preliminary. Oh, you did. I'm sorry.
I did, and so did she,
Okay,
and he just bought you the papers.
I'm sorry. It said any item, so I didn't have the item number on here. If you'd like to speak, what is your name?
Jessica Jackson.
Okay, Ms. Jackson, please. So this is item number 3 or item number 2.
My name is Jessica Jackson, and what I have to say about it is, look, when you go to talk about landmarks and all this, I do agree with Blakemore in terms of you had to keep it looking as close to the original as possible and keep the historic things there, which is the reason why you're saying that you want to keep it. So you don't keep it and do away with the things that are historical about the place. That doesn't even make any sense. In agreement with that. Now, I do also agree that when you talk about landmarks, how is it that the 79th and Stony Regal Theater is not being talked about? How is it that all this redistricting and rezoning and stuff keeps missing the Regal Theater? You know, none of this is making any sense. You know, when you talk about TIF money and talk about landmarks and conserving property and preserving property, all those red brick buildings on the south side and west side of Chicago are landmark buildings. They've been there for over 100 years. And you all come in here and use TIF money and all that to use every part of the city to build up every part of the city except for the south side. You just drive past all those abandoned buildings, and it never dawns on you to use city money and public funding to fix those buildings. Your mind only tells you to let them stay desolate, to let them be boarded up on streets like 71st, 75th, 79th, the heart of the South Side, buildings that have been abandoned for years. And then every time you come in here, you hear about how TIF money is expired and was spent on what? And I don't fault you all. If our Black aldermen are so sorry and so pitiful and pathetic that they don't come in here and solicit for our neighborhoods, that's them. And we're going to deal with them. They getting out them seats. Believe me when I tell you they getting out them seats. But in the meantime, in between time, we're bringing it to the forefront about how the South Side is being intentionally neglected. These Black ministers come in here going so hard about making sure these illegal immigrants get somewhere to stay, even offering up their churches for them to have somewhere to stay. But they sit idly by and watch the Southside residents get displaced, get our property stolen. It's a shame. It's a shame. And Ms. Beaumont, right there, we done had this discussion before. You know who I am. And you need to get on it too. You need to get on it too. Stop telling me about my time, because they never run out of time of taking our property. They run that time, never runs out for them to take our property. How about that part?
Thank you, Ms. Jackson.
How about that part?
Ms. Moore?
Steal from us.
My name is Edith Moore. My name is Edith Moore. I'm 3.5 years in Chicago. So, I'm learning a lot. I see where my brothers and sisters have been losing marks, even the landmarks. We are losing. And so, on the 7th, it was that Tuesday, they had the housing and real estate. And then today they had the zoning, and now they got the landmarks. I can't wrap my head around this. Over there, all Gentiles wanting what they want, and they getting what they want. And then come over here, you talk about our Black church and what you've done to one Black church. I can't wrap this around my head. We cannot eat one Black church. We cannot live in one Black church. We can't do a business in one Black church. So, we don't have no help nowhere. I don't get this. I don't get this. When is it gonna stop? Give us a chance to, and then you talking about something way back in the 1900s. Who want to go way back there? We need something now, today, in 25, to help the Black community. Like Ms. Jackson says, it's desolate. I was surprised when I came to Chicago. I was very devastated. What? When, I used to visit my brother back in the 80s, the 70s. I mean, and hey, it was rocking and rolling. And then my daughter asked me to come live. I'm thinking, the only thing I could think about is being in the Black community and going to the shops and there's nothing going on. And my first ammunition was the jazz club, because I like jazz. Nothing. Nothing. We don't have nothing. No entertainment. And you're talking about one black church? And it's too many already. 411 block.
Thank you, Ms. Wood.
May I just make one point, please?
No, she's already had her time to speak. You've already had your time.
Don't come trying to talk us out of what we talking about.
Don't, you already
Don't
had
try
your
to talk
time.
us out of what we talking about. We know what we talking about. We know what we talking about. We know what we talking about. Just because they didn't pay you to come here, just because they didn't pay.
I'd like to request a motion to adopt the preliminary landmark recommendation.
Talking about.
Ms. Jackson, please.
Tell her
Ms.
to be quiet with her nonsense.
Uh,
Correct us. She had her time.
Ms. Jackson, thank you. I appreciate it. I've asked Ms. Mitchell to, thank you.
There you go.
I'd like to request a motion to adopt the preliminary landmark recommendation for the Morning Star Baptist Church of Chicago located at 3993 South Dr. Martin Luther King Drive. Is there a motion? So
Second.
moved. Commissioner Burns, second by Commissioner Tolliver. I'll do the roll call. Commissioner Jekowitz.
Yes.
Commissioner Boatright.
Yes.
Commissioner Fair.
Yes.
Commissioner Ponce.
Yes.
Commissioner Rubin.
Yes.
And I am a yes as well. The motion carries unanimously. Next item on the agenda is a report from the Department of Planning and Development and final landmark recommendation for the Rector Building located at 79 West Monroe Street. This is in the 34th Ward. We do have two steps to cover this agenda item. First, we are going to hear the report from the Department of Planning and Development and ask the commission to vote on this report. After that, I will call on Dan Kleiber for the final landmark recommendation and ask the commission to take another vote on the recommendation. So Commissioner Boatright, floor is yours, please.
All right, thank you. The Department of Planning and Development finds that the proposed landmark designation of the Rector Building located at 79 West Monroe Street supports the city's overall planning goals for the surrounding Loop community area and the central planning region, and is consistent with the city's governing policies and plans. Next slide, please. The Rector Building is located in the heart of the Loop and the city's financial district and is one of a group of buildings that's being repurposed with support from the city. Next slide, please. By 2020, the repurposing of aging Loop office buildings was well underway, but the pandemic accelerated the need to find a new life for them. In response, the Loop Revitalization Initiative was launched in September of 2022 to address a lack of affordable housing options and unprecedented levels of office and retail vacancies in the Loop. The initiative uses public financing, assistance, and to implement three interrelated components. First, the creation of affordable housing. DPD and DOH issued an invitation for proposals in 2022 to convert underutilized office buildings to residential uses with supporting retail/commercial uses. The proposals were required to include a minimum of 30% on-site affordable units for households earning an average of 60% of the area median income. From 9 applications submitted in December 2022, 3 finalists, 111 West Monroe, 208 South LaSalle, 135 South LaSalle, were selected in March of 2023, followed in May by 2 additional finalists, 30 North LaSalle, 105 West Adams, and in January 2024 by an additional finalist for the Rector Building. City Council approved TIF funding for the Rector Building in October 2024, while 4 of the projects located at 111 West Monroe, 208 South LaSalle, 30 North LaSalle, and 135 South LaSalle are advancing towards City Council's consideration. Second, DPD is supporting revitalization of LaSalle streetscape and public realm with the $1 million in initial funding for the engineering assessment and visioning work is ongoing. Third, DPD is supporting locally owned cultural and dining businesses in the Loop. Up to $5 million in Small Business Improvement Fund, also known as SPIF, grants were approved by City Council in January of 2023 for up to $250,000 in grants for each awardee and an additional $50,000 for businesses expanding from low to medium income communities. City assistance to support permanent improvements for 5 restaurants and a cultural establishment were approved. More grant awards are anticipated. Next slide, please. The development team for the Rector building includes Brown Derby LLC and R2 Development LLC. They are proposing adaptive reuse of approximately 100,000 square feet of the building located on floors 7 to 13, which will be converted into 117 residential units, of which 41 or 35% will be affordable units for households with a range of incomes averaging 60% of the area median income. Next slide. The project will also feature renovation of a basement, ground floor lobby, floors 14, and a small subsidized retail space on the lower level. The residents will also have access to the basement and floor 14, providing several amenities, including tenant lounge, fitness center, and outdoor areas. The approximately 2,000 square feet of retail space will be subsidized for interested parties. The $64.2 million project includes $28 million in TIF assistance. Other proposed funding includes historic tax credits. The city's landmark designation would also make the project eligible for the waiver of fees for building permits. Next slide. DPD undertook the Loop Revitalization Initiative to better prepare the Loop for a new future. Landmark designation of the Rector building reflects this commitment. Therefore, the Department of Planning and Development finds that the proposed landmark designation of the Rector building supports the city's overall planning goals for the surrounding Loop and the central planning region that is consistent with the city's governing policies and plans. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Commissioner Boatwright. Does the commission have any questions for Commissioner Boatwright? Are there any representatives of the owner that would like to speak?
No comment.
No?
Or at the final?
He's here.
Okay, they'll do it in the final. All right. If not, there are a couple folks that have signed up for public comments on this. Hang on just 1 second. I want to make sure. Yep, I got this. Mr. Blakemore?
Thank you. I have history here. Many years coming to these meetings, and I have received an education on the job. What has happened since COVID-19 to our commercial areas downtown on the sale and on Wabash throughout the Loop? We have these historical buildings, but they're empty. The people are not here. So the owners of the buildings want to use their property to make money. They can't rent them out. So they come to the city, and it's under affordable housing. Some of these old buildings cannot be converted into homes. But where they elevate, you got to have so much lighting in these old buildings. The elevator have to be at a certain place. So this is a historical building. However, the interior is going to change. And you're going to try to modernize it and bring people back because the owners, it's about the money. Follow the money. They got empty buildings on the sale. Now, what are we going to do with these buildings? We're going to go to government. We're going to go to Landmark. We're going to try to convert these old, antiquated architectural buildings into interior into something modern at the expense of the public. The people have to pay for that. And I don't know how this is going to work out in the interest of the public. But you're using the historical facade, the exterior, but you're changing the interior. The last presentation with that church, I just couldn't believe it, and seemed like it makes me sometimes wonder, who is George Blakemore? No, can't you see what I see? They show the historical of that church. We're going back, it's a connection. All the things that have gone through that, but the criteria of a historical building is to keep the historical facade exterior, and I advocate for interior also. So again, that's why it's very, very, very important of a man of Mr. Blakemore's stature to show up, to speak up on the behalf of the community, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blakemore.
Wait for me.
Mr. Grassi from.
Good afternoon, Patrick Rossi speaking today on behalf of Preservation Chicago. I'm just going to reiterate some comments I made at last month's meeting. Preservation Chicago wishes to express its support for this final landmark recommendation. As stated previously, we're likewise supportive of the planned adaptive reuse of the Rector Building at 79 West Monroe, as we are supportive of the larger suite of planned office to residential conversions along the LaSalle Street corridor, which you just heard about. Our executive director, Ward Miller, has been in regular contact with the stakeholders of these projects and has testified multiple times in support of this particular project. As it moves through the zoning process, we are thrilled to see it move forward. We do hope that the iconic weather bell can be restored. There was some discussion of that at last month's meeting. And we also mentioned the building once had this elaborate multi-story cornice, masonry cornice. We'll again encourage the development team to reconstruct that cornice if possible or where possible, and any other lost elements, returning the building to its historic appearance. But otherwise, great project, and we're highly supportive. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grassi. Nobody else has signed up to speak on this item. Is there any further discussion by the commission? Having none, I'd like to request a motion to accept the department's report for the Rector Building located at 79 West Monroe Street. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Commissioner Jackowitz.
Seconded.
Second, Commissioner Fair. I'll do the roll call. Commissioner Boatright.
Yep.
Commissioner Burns. Commissioner Ponce. Commissioner Rubin.
Yes.
Commissioner Tolliver.
Yes.
I am a yes as well. The motion carries unanimously. So we'll go on to the second portion of this, which is the final landmark recommendation. And Dan Kleiber, you're on.
And now, commissioners, for your consideration today is the final landmark designation for the Rector Building located at 79 West Monroe Street. At the December commission meeting, you found that the Rector Building meets 3 criteria for Chicago landmark designation, including criterion 1 for its cultural heritage. The Rector Building was built in 1905 for Charles E. Rector, a renowned restaurateur who operated popular restaurants in Chicago, New York, and Washington, D.C. in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. The building was home to several financial institutions through much of the 20th century, including the Hibernian Bank, Chicago Trust Company, and the Bell Savings and Loan Association. The building was part of a larger financial district that coalesced around LaSalle Street and migrated along Monroe Street in the early 20th century as the city's financial services industry grew. The Bell Savings and Loan Association, founded in 1925 by 13 employees of the Illinois Bell Telephone Company, occupied the lower banking floors of the Rector Building from 1951 to 1997. In addition to the building's heritage, you found that the Rector Building also meets criterion 3 for person. Charles E. Rector was a pioneer in Chicago's early restaurant industry and became a nationally recognized restaurateur and entrepreneur during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. This reputation was further cemented in 1893 when Rector opened the Café de la Marine at the World's Columbian Exposition in Jackson Park. Rector's success in the restaurant business spurred him to expand into real estate development in both Chicago and New York City. At left is an image of a menu from Rector's Oyster House in Chicago, which was on Adams. The middle is an image from a 1909 play by Paul Potter called The Girl from Rector's, and you can see there is a giant lobster in the middle. While at the right, there's an image from the Chicago Tribune in 1908 that depicted a Saturday night in Chicago, how millionaires and their imitators amused themselves in Rector's Lobster Palace after the theater. You also found that the Rector building meets criterion 5 for architect. The Rector building was designed by architect Jarvis Hunt, pictured at right. Hunt trained in Paris and at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and he is best known for his impressive Beaux-Arts train stations. The image at center is his first known building he worked on in Chicago, which was the Vermont State Building at the World's Columbian Exposition. He was also the sole architect for the Great Lakes Naval Training Station in Lake County, Illinois, which was constructed between 1905 and 1911, and he was actively involved in the City Beautiful movement in Chicago in the early 20th century. The Rector building is the oldest surviving example of a commercial high-rise building in the Loop designed by Hunt. Constructed in two parts, the north portion facing Monroe Street was built in 1905, and the south addition along Clark Street was built in 1923. The building is one of Hunt's earliest designs, combining classical design details with 20th century modernist elements from the Chicago School and Prairie School. Other designs by Hunt in the 19-teens also mixed classical elements with non-historical styles like Prairie and Art Deco. For the auditorium building at the Chicago Municipal Tuberculosis Sanitarium located on the northwest side and a designated Chicago landmark, Hunt combined elements of Italian Renaissance revival with bold geometric detailing and brickwork to express the horizontality and organic nature of the Prairie School. Finally, the image on the right is another important work of Hunt's, which was the American Trust and Savings Bank, constructed in 1907. The building is demolished, but it was right across the street from the Rector building where Chase Plaza is today. Finally, you found that the Rector building meets the separate integrity criterion. As mentioned during Commissioner Boatwright's DPD report, the Rector building will be rehabilitated and adapted for residential use as part of the LaSalle Street revitalization project, and the existing conditions of the building easily meet the integrity criterion. The building is located in the 34th Ward, and Alderman Conway has expressed his support for the designation. So finally, staff recommend that the significant historical and architectural features of the building be identified as all exterior elevations, including roof lines of the building. You have a final landmark recommendation to that effect. And with us today is Emily Ramsey, the historic consultant for the project, as well as Gary Stoltz from the development side. And then to my left is Steve Valenziano from Alderman Conway's office.
Thank you, Dan. Who wants to start? Might as well.
Steve Valenziano,
Thanks, Steve.
coordinator with the 34th Ward. And the Alderman just wanted me to come down and convey his strong support for this landmark designation to further the repurposing of this building and as part of the Loop revitalization initiative, which he also really strongly supports. Thank you.
Thank you. Is the applicant also come on up? If you could state your name and organization, please.
Gary Stoltz with R2 Development.
But I just want to say we will be keeping the bell as part of the project. It's unlikely we'll be able to replace the existing cornice. We would love to, but we're currently focusing on an exterior lighting plan that will highlight the current features that are historic. Just want to say thank you to the Landmark team, to Department of Planning and Development, to Emily Ramsey, and everybody who's helped the Alderman's office help make this possible. So that's it.
Thank you. Does the commission have any questions for the applicant? Nobody? Great, thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Since we took public comment already for this proposed landmark, I don't think there's a need to testify another time. Therefore, I'd like to request a motion to adopt the final landmark recommendation to City Council for the Rector Building. Is there a motion?
So moved.
So moved. Commissioner Rubin, and second by Commissioner Boatright. Do the roll call. Commissioner Jackowitz,
Yes.
Commissioner Burns,
Yes.
Commissioner Fair,
Yes.
Commissioner Ponce,
Yes.
Commissioner Tolliver.
Yes.
And I am a yes as well. The motion carries unanimously. Congratulations. Next item on the agenda is the Permit Review Committee reports, and Commissioner Jackowitz, floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, Chairman. The Permit Review Committee reviewed and conditionally approved one project at its December 5th, 2024 meeting. The report summarizing the scope of the proposed project and the committee's decision was included in your packets, and this report is for your information and for the record.
Thank you. Any questions there? Nope. Emily, floor is yours.
The month of November, staff approved 90 permit applications. A total of 117 reviews were performed by staff, and the average number of days to issue approval or correction was 6.5 days. I also wanted to make the commission aware that on December 9th, staff received an administrative order from the Commissioner of the Department of Buildings determining that the building at 2347 South Michigan has been found to be imminently dangerous and hazardous following an interior inspection of the property, and the building has now been demolished on an emergency basis. Building inspectors were not able to access the interior prior to November 22nd.
Thank you, Emily. So everyone's aware of that. Next item is the schedule for a public hearing on a proposed landmark designation pursuant to 2-120-670 through 2-120-680 of the municipal code. This announcement is for the Wax Tracks building located at 2449 North Lincoln Avenue in the 43rd Ward. The public hearing regarding the proposed landmark designation will be held on Friday, January 17th at 9:30 a.m. City Hall, 121 North LaSalle Street, second floor in the City Council chambers. And Commissioner Rubin, to my right, will be the hearing officer. Next item on the agenda is the announcement that the program committee's review of suggestions received from the public for Chicago landmark designation and nominations to the National Register of Historic Places will be held on Thursday, January 23rd, 2025 at 1:00 p.m. in City Hall on the 11th floor, room 1103. Deadline for submissions is Friday, January 17th, 2025. All suggestions must be submitted on a suggestion form available at the Chicago Landmarks website at www.cityofchicago.org/en/departments/DED/supplement/Chicago Landmarks publications and additional information .html. And there being no further business, I'd like to request a motion to adjourn. Is there a motion? Commissioner Boatright,
Second.
and second by Commissioner Fair. All in favor? Anybody opposed? Motion carries. This meeting is adjourned. And Commissioner Jackowitz.
All right.
Thank you.
Permit Review Committee will be again at 1:48. 5 minutes.
Thanks. I know.